person who's about to come up next has extremely vast involvement and knowledge and experience in making amazing global brands out of Indian products. And ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to welcome him on stage with a huge round of applause as he talks about building world-class Indian brands right here in India. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President FMCG ITC Ltd, Mr. Sanjeev Puri.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I at the outset say thank you very much for inviting me here. So thank you IAA for inviting me here. It's indeed a pleasure and a privilege to be here and share a few thoughts on something we in ITC feel very passionately about, creating world-class Indian brands. I'm not going to spend too much time on explaining why we need to create world-class Indian brands. I might perhaps be preaching to the converted, but I will spend more time in sharing our own experiences in creating world-class brands in the Indian global marketplace, to share with you our journey, what were the strengths that we relied on, what capacities we had to build, and what methods we used to synergize strengths resident in our diverse array of businesses to delight the consumer. There is no doubt that winning brands are a formidable stroke of strength for an enterprise to which they belong. And it's really ownership of intellectual property that manifests itself in the form of winning brands. And this creates sustainable value for the enterprise, often at a premium to its peers. And winning brands are also a matter of pride to the nation to which they belong. They reflect the nation's innovative capacity. And they have profound impact on the economy of the nation because they capture and retain a larger share of the value within the economy. They spur the creation of fresh value chains, leading to sustainable employment. Yes, whilst this is true, it is difficult. But the world is replete with a lot of examples. Just to take the example of Samsung, 20%, the net sales of Samsung is about 20% of the GDP of South Korea. There are examples like Apple, Sony, Microsoft that have all enriched the economies to which they belong. So there are global examples. India is well known for its scientific talent, technological capabilities, entrepreneurial spirit. But it is yet, I think, as an Indian, I do, and I'm sure many of you feel disappointed that we are still not known as a nation with globally competitive brands. In fact, even if you look closer home, in the global Indian marketplace itself, particularly at the high end of the consumption, you find that it is dominated by global brands. Examples of Indian brands, big brands, are far and few. It is not easy. It is not easy to develop globally competitive brands. It requires decades of investment in research and development. It is not something that will happen overnight. It requires a lot of innovation. And more importantly, I think it requires deep commitment from the leadership, because you might not see results overnight when you embark on this journey. But you need to be committed and stay the course. And I believe today, when the Prime Minister has made a clarion call for Make in India, I think this is an opportune time for us to create world-class Indian brands. I'm sure all of you will agree with me that to create a vibrant or accelerate manufacturing, the opportunities through factor cost are fairly limited. Because over time, global brands have developed global or regional supply chains and very efficient supply chains. Tariff barriers are low. So what is going to cause the supply chains to shift gears? So I believe it is really the ownership of intellectual capital that will manifest in Indian brands, and that's what's going to provide the winning edge to spur the creation of fresh value chain and lead to create a lot of livelihood and sustainable development. Now, I thought the best way for me to share my thoughts on this is to take you through the journey of ITC itself and explain to you what we did and why we did what we did. Well, whilst our diversification journey is pretty old, it was really in 1996 when our current chairman, Mr. Y.C. Deveshwar, took over, that we redefined the corporate vision. And I thought I will share this because this got a thread across what we did subsequently, where he said that ITC's vision is to be a vibrant engine of sustainable growth for the Indian economy, subserving larger national priorities. So it was not, very clearly, it was not merely about shareholder value. It was not about creating merely a profitable business. It was about dealing with the three bottom lines simultaneously: economic, societal, and environmental. So all these had to be dealt with together if we were to make a sustainable contribution to the society. So it is in this, it is with this vision that ITC was inspired to progress on a significant diversification strategy. And we identified FMCG as an area. But by the time we commenced the journey, it was in the early part of 2000, and bulk of what we did was in the later half of 2000. So we were already in a fiercely competitive global Indian marketplace. So it was a really very competitive environment that we moved ahead with this. And I think all of us are aware that the FMCG segment is exciting. Even in the last 5 years, FMCG has doubled, despite the fact in the last 2-3 years, the economy has not done particularly well, and the growth rates in this segments are comparatively muted. And given the demographic dividend, the rising consumption expenditure, aspirations, urbanization, so they're all factors that will propel the FMCG industry into a higher plane going forward. And there's no reason why in the next few years it should not double, and so on, so forth. So the opportunity is definitely huge. So while the opportunity is huge, I think the challenge also is pretty daunting. In a way, I might say it is like when you get in and with the aspiration to become a leader, it is really like a David versus Goliath story. But there is, I think, some path that can be adopted that will hopefully give some success. Our journey has been fairly rewarding and enriching. Of course, for us, it is just that the journey has begun. But just to set the context, we have in the last decade, largely in the last decade, developed a number of world-class brands. Of course, these brands are today available in the global Indian marketplace, and we would like to see them to get to a stature before we really look at going outside the shores of India. I think the opportunity in India itself is large, and that's where we are focused on. And each one of the categories that we are operating in, we are either leaders or number 2 or number 3. There are categories like Atta where we are number 1. There are categories like premium cream biscuits that we are number 1. There are categories like the notebooks. Classmates notebook is number 1. And there are categories like noodles where we are number 2. Engage deodorants, we are number 2. So we've had, I think the message is really that we have, with whatever we have done, we have been able to get some favorable consumer response. We've got consumer franchise. Let me move on to sharing how we went about it. When you start anything new, you're always faced with a set of choices. And when you don't have a history of what has worked and what has not worked, I think making these choices is extremely difficult. But I think what we relied on were some principles that emanate from the, emanate from the vision that we had articulated. Our vision was to be number 1. So when we discuss this whole issue of should we incubate or buy, could I ever imagine to be a leader if I had never created categories on my own? Could I ever know what value I was getting if I adopted the route of buying or the inorganic route without my own understanding and depth in that subject. It was clearly not possible. So we decided to choose a path less traveled. We said we will create it organically. That will lay us a very strong foundation for what we want to achieve in future. That required disproportionate investments in many areas, and we did that with the objective of what we want to be without bothering too much about the results for this quarter or the year ahead. What about owning a supply chain or leasing it? I mean, a low-risk strategy is to lease it. But we said, if we want to be the best, and if we believe that we will succeed, why should we shy away? If I want to get the best quality, wouldn't owning the supply chain be the best? Because the reality is there are institutional voids in India. And if I want to add to the infrastructure assets of India, I cannot lease it. I must invest in creating my own. So there were broad principles that guided us through this whole decision-making process. And what we realized right at the beginning, that as we were going to deal with formidable brands, mega brands, we would succeed only if we are able to create clearly superior and differentiated or unique first time to the market products. If we did not achieve this, we would never succeed in the vision we are going. And if I had to do something that is superior, I also need to possess a superior skill. A superior product cannot come out of thin air. What is the superior skill that I have to bring on board to create a superior product? So it had to be built on certain existing strengths. It could not be in isolation of that. And fortunately, because of our diverse array of businesses, we had a few strengths which we thought we could build on and leverage this to create winning products. We had great agri-sourcing capabilities, we had great consumer insights, and more importantly, we understood the equity of tradition. We understood our insights were very Indian. We dealt with people in rural India, and we dealt with people in high luxury and hotels. So we had a good idea of the consumers. Of course, we had a very extensive distribution network, brand management skills, and we had great cuisine skills in the hotels business. So we needed to leverage these to really create winning products, and in the process we realized we will create new expertise, and then we can get on to areas which are not directly aligned to these strengths. But the first task for us was, although the innovation engine was there in ITC and the culture was there, but I think what was required in future was manifold more. So it required a lot of investment. So our Life Sciences and Technology Center was geared up. We brought in 350 scientists, which had already got more than about 350 patents under their belt now, creating products of tomorrow and day after. One of the very interesting statements we made, quality, for example, we take as given today. And I'm talking about it because we said quality is going to be an existential challenge for us. And why we said that is that a mega brand can have a second chance. But a fledgling brand like ours will never have a second chance. If I get the quality wrong, then it meant not only the brand, but maybe the reputation of the house of ITC to offer. So it was that important. And just to give an anecdote, whilst we had strong skills in agri-sourcing, we did not have skills in sourcing milk. We are just on the verge of launching our first dairy product. But I must tell you, we spent years around our factory in Bihar piloting sourcing of milk. Before we decided to venture in, we believed we had understood what were the nuances because we were so paranoid about quality. And the other piece I want to talk about is really this whole piece about talent. Now, we said that we wanted to create in this organization the capacity to create new categories, new brands organically, provide an opportunity to managers to unleash their creative best and create new products. So we promoted this concept of professional entrepreneurs, as the short form being pioneers. And we said that this will create the capacity and the DNA in the organization. It will build a strong foundation on which we will build on our subsequent growth phases. So it was a path, it was a difficult path, more time-spaking path, a path that had more challenges, required more resources to be deployed. But we said we needed to do this if we wanted to have a foundation. Of course, we did supplement by specialism, but largely we used in-house talent. So it was a choice we made, much different from what is normally done. And given that we are already within FMCG itself, we are already into more than 20 categories. We have other lines of businesses. So it was important to create a strategy of organization that creates undiluted focus. We did not want separate companies because we found merit in harnessing the synergy out of diversity, which I will explain going forward. So these were the principles in which, around which we built our strategy, and let me explain these by a couple of examples. One of our earlier products was Ashirwad Atta today, Ashirwad Atta. And we used our strong backend, the pioneering e-Chopal, the rural digital infrastructure, to buy wheat not only competitively, but also it gave us farm-grade traceability. It also gave us product safety because we exercised a choice on which area to buy and not to buy. And farm-grade traceability was important because we knew wheat is different across the countries, and the preference of wheat or the taste of wheat preferred by consumers is different in different parts of the country. So we brought in our skills of blending from our traditional business of tobacco. We had identity-preserved wheat, so we can customize it for regional tastes. And the chefs in the hotel were the ones who actually fine-tuned the recipes to make sure we make something that delights the consumers. And of course, the foods business had to integrate and put all this together, the trade marketing and distribution infrastructure, took it across the length and breadth of the country. And in a short span of time, this has become the market leader. And it was also much against the normal grain of thinking of trying to invest behind a largely commoditized business. But this business itself, over time, we have established can become a large and profitable business. Let me take another example. And somebody spoke about noodles just a short while back. It's a topical subject, so let me talk about it. Now, we realized that the market, the brand that we were going to deal with, I mean, it was a fairly large brand, and unless we had something unique, we were not going to succeed. So we spent hours with consumers in their dining spaces, in their kitchens, looking at how they cooked, served, consumed noodles, and then we came across with three very clear gaps or opportunities. First and foremost, the kids love to slurp noodles. They want long strands. But all our noodles are square and our cooking vessels are round. So you break it, the slurps break. So it reduces the enjoyment of the child. The second was that very often the noodles are consumed a short while after they are made because the child is playing and the mother has to cajole him to come. So by the time the child comes, the noodles have become lumpy, particularly more so in winters. And this was an accepted norm in this category. But we said, let us challenge that. Why cannot we have non-sticky noodles? And the third important thing, and that's where I think the hotel's expertise came in, how do I create a winning taste? So that's where the magic masala was created with dehydrated vegetables. And of course, because this is a unique product, the standard technology or machinery did not exist. We had actually had to make 1,500 round blocks of noodles to perfect it. So that was the iteration that we had to go through. We had to work with a host of technology partners in Japan to develop the process line, to design the quality systems. I mean, when you get into detail, it's quite humongous. It requires years of effort. And we have today, just to give you some data points, 700 checks, 100 tests. So that is the kind of rigor that goes into designing something like this. And of course, having made this proposition, I think you also need great advertising to reach the message very clearly to the consumer. And I think our partners also have done a great job here. And just to give you a little glimpse, just before the crisis started, we were close to a 20% share in this category. Let me show the first one, the 3 pillars of superiority.
पापा, यूजुअली अच्छी चीजें राउंड होती है ना?
जरूरी नहीं है।
अगर गाड़ी के टायर्स राउंड ना होते तो गाड़ी चलती
नहीं।
अगर बॉल राउंड ना होता तो सन, मून, दुनिया सब राउंड है ना पापा?
लेकिन ये रूम तो स्क्वायर है।
अगर राउंड होता तो
शैतान कॉर्नर में पनिश नहीं होता। और अगर तुम्हारा सनफीस्ट टिप्पी राउंड न होता तो
मुझे लंबे लंबे नूडल्स नहीं मिलते।
नया सनफीस्ट यिप्पी, सबसे अलग राउंड शेप में, सो नो ब्रेकिंग और मिले रियली लॉन्ग नूडल्स, क्योंकि
राउंड इट्स बेटर नो।
नया सनफीस्ट यिप्पी, द बेटर नूडल।
Similarly, over a period of time, like pre-winters, we ran a campaign to explain the fact that it was non-sticky. And at some point of time, you always find that there are people who adopt a brand early, and there are so-called laggards who also wait for assurance in the community before they adopt. So we also ran a campaign to explain the meganess of the brand when it had already gone into double digits. So there was a series of advertising that supported this and took it to where it is today. And of course today, because there are safety concerns, what is on air is really the shift reassurance campaign on safety. Because it's only brand really that is kind of present pan-India today in the shelves with the full portfolio. And we have had our bit in creating some unique first time to the market products. There is Dark Fantasy Choco Fills, the first center-filled biscuits in India. We've had Tangles and particularly Mad Angles, which is, again, Mad Angles is inspired from Indian snacking. And we have Ashirwad Methi Atta. We have a soap which is actually a frozen gel. The experience is far different from a normal soap. Okay. Now, whilst we have received a lot of success in many of the brands that we have put across, I think, and the journey is fulfilling and satisfying. I think more importantly, I would like to say that we are glad that we now have the capacity to bring out many innovations during the year, enter new categories. Last year itself, we entered 4 categories. We brought in 100 brand variants to the market. So that capacity has been well honed. For paucity of time, I will not play this video. I will just quickly sum up by briefly talking about the third dimension, which is creating societal and environmental capital. And first and foremost, our strategy of making in-house. Of course, considering the complexity in buying land, it has not been possible everywhere. But we today have more than 60 industrial projects in the pipeline. We have committed investment of over 20,000 crores in building our infrastructure. We are a global exemplar in sustainability, and I think what has worked for us is that we have been able to fashion models that integrate societal value and shareholder value. We have not, if we had done it in isolation, impact would have been smaller. And a great example is Ashirwad Atta itself. The e-Chopal framework empowers farmers. It makes the prices transparent. It makes the farmers get the right value for what they are producing. They do not need to go through the multiple middlemen who capture value. So it empowers the society. And the anchor is Ashirwad Atta. So it's a sustainable value chain. It gives us competitiveness for the reasons that I explained. So it's a win-win situation. There is also this example of Agarbatti. Mangaldeep is the brand. It is made by underprivileged women. There are 40,000 women engaged in that. And what started as a CSR activity, we thought that unless I can scale it up and provide market access, it will only benefit 50, 100, or 200 women. But if I wanted to make a significant impact, I had to create a brand out of it. And that's how the Agarbatti business was born. So it empowers 40,000 women. And of course, in the process, we have also created water harvesting capacity in more than 2 lakh hectares in the country. We have also done a lot for livestock. There are about 11 lakhs milch animals whom we have helped improve productivity and so on and so forth. And at the end of it, what makes all of us, or what gives all of us a greater sense of satisfaction is that we as a company, in fact, we are the only company in the world to be carbon positive, water positive, and solid recycling waste positive. So whilst we have created consumer franchise, created some value for shareholders, I think more importantly, I think we are contributing to not only preserving, but enriching the environmental capital. We impact the lives of 6 million people. 43% of our energy, and we are a large paper business, is consumed from renewable sources, and we have the greenest luxury hotel chain in the world. There are 11 platinum green hotels in the world. 10 of them belong to the ITC chain.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Wow.